My niggas hate me, show me no mercy. Brother forsake me, woman them hurt me. Mercy, mercy, Lord have mercy. Okay, walk like a champion, talk like a champion. You don't hear that semi blow. Pull up on your set slow. You don't hear no engine. Put a body on the gun wide. Walk like a champion, talk like a champion. You don't hear that semi blow. Pull up on your set slow. You don't hear no engine. Put a body on the gun wide. Mercy, mercy, the wicked have no mercy. So I gotta stay with a blick of niggas be thirsty. Quicker than the flick of a picture, niggas could murk me. Catch you with your dick in these bitches and do you dirty. But I'm God body, I put that shit on the jersey. No weapon formed against me shall hurt me. Go to war on your turf, I put you under the surface. Mac 10s, Mac 11s, call a nigga Bernie. Open up the chest of a nigga, them bitches burning. Living by the scripture that's written in this discernment. I see that window closing, can't be playing in the curtains. I ain't playing like a circus. I'm a man with a purpose. Can't be laying with the serpents. Keep the squares out your circle. You ain't standing on your word. What kind of man are you? X you out, cross you over. I had to shell guide you. Can't stop a nigga drive the beat. They can't guard you. Hell have no fury compared to what God do. I'm a whole gangster. My nigga not partial. 38 special. This nigga think he's special. I go ahead depart you. I ain't finna argue. Walk like a champion. Talk like a champion. You don't hear that semi blow. Pull up on your set slow. You don't hear no engine. Put a body on the gun wide. Walk like a champion. Talk like a champion. You don't hear that semi blow. Pull up on your set slow. You don't hear no engine. Put a body on the gun wide.
It's not hate to say that we were kidnapped and brought here. It's true. It's not hate to say that we were Jim Crow, discriminated and segregated. It's true. It's not hate to say that the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in this country, came up with a hypocritical desegregation decision 9 years ago, which they haven't enforced yet. That's not hate. That's true.
You're quoted as having said when an airliner crashed with a number of white people on board, that you were glad it happened.
The white race in this country collectively are guilty of these crimes that our people are suffering from collectively. And therefore, they will suffer some collective disaster, collective grief. And when that plane crashed in France with 130 white people on
no one man should withstand the weight of the world on his shoulders that die when it's over. Ain't no global warming, the world getting colder. Ain't nobody doing shit, they taking our culture. Wake up and see y'all, ain't no balance on one side of the seesaw. We at war with Esau, but ain't nobody down with us. My niggas get up. I know what it's like to wake up fucked up. I know what it's like when the pain cut deep. You can't get on your feet and you just wanna stay asleep. When the shit too much, a nigga needs to roll up. And all you got is this money and it still ain't enough. To live is to survive, gotta hustle to stay alive. My girl don't understand, I can see that look in her eyes. So not the trouble of soul, I pacify with lies. I inflict the pain and wipe the tears of her cries. Baby, I know you heard an apologies in advance. I just pray to God that he give me another chance. Trying to make it to heaven, I got my hell of a plan. Dancing with the devil makes me a hell of a man. Yeah, I'm trying to be a better man, but my nigga down south won't put.
It's not hate to say that we were kidnapped and brought here. It's true.
Yeah. What's cracking back in? What's good? Shalom. What's cracking? Right. I know you see the title. We back at it again. The beast is here. And it is a number of a man. Right? Yeah, we're gonna get into it, right? We'll get into these prophecies and stuff like that. Break it down, see where we at in this thing, right? See what we dealing with. Right? Get a little end time understanding, right? On what's going on and the things to come. So of course, before we start giving all praises to the Most High God, Yahweh, and we do so in His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, who the world probably might know as Jesus Christ, right? So we gonna get into it. Right? Jump right into it. But first, let's start with Revelation 3 real quick. Revelation 3. And let's start at 5. Right? Revelation 3 and 5. Let's start right there, right? Um, and all that cool stuff. Hold on. Bear with me, bear with me. Alright, so yeah, Revelation 3 and 5, right? You know, when you get there, say amen. So yeah, right? So it says, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in a white raiment, and I will not blot his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father, before his before his angels. Right? So, you know, so Christ is saying, he that overcometh, right? There's a lot of stuff that's about to take place, a lot of stuff going down, right? A lot of stuff that's, you know, about to happen in the near future, in this coming future. And we gotta, you know, stay within the faith and stay strong, you know, in this thing and to the end. And like I said, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in a white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father. Right? So Christ, like, he gonna vouch for you on that day. Like, yo, this my man's in him, right? They did what they're supposed to do, right? They hold it down, right? They put in work, right? So he's gonna vouch for you on that day. And that's all you want, so him to put in a good word for you, right? And it says, and before the angels, right? So, and that's the thing. So, like I said, a lot of stuff is going to happen. A lot of stuff is going to happen, and we got to stay strong and can't get weak, when certain troubles and storms happen in our life and stuff, then we just give up on hope and just, and then, end up falling out of the faith, right? It's in Matthew 10 and 32. It says, whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, him I will confess also before my Father, which is in heaven. And that's what we do. We honor, the Son. We honor our King by, preaching the gospel, to our people and, explaining the sacrifice, right? And not denying, the power of Christ, right? And not denying, what he had done for his people, right? And not losing faith in situations when things still go awry and things are bad and now like, well, I'm not I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if this, stuff is real, or I don't know if, you just start having doubt, on different levels, right? And you don't want to be like this guy over here. Hold on. Where is that? Hold on. Find it this way. So you don't want to be this. This is at Matthew 13:4. It says, start at 3. It says, and he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, behold, the sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside. So, some people ignore the information, ignore, the understanding of God. They want to stay far away from the Bible and religion and whatever, right? They just comfortable doing their thing, right? And it says, some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth, and for when they sprung up, because they had no deepness in the earth. So you don't want to be that person that, soon as you start getting into the faith, you excited, you pumped up, then here come a little trouble, and now you losing faith, and now you kind of not as enthusiastic as you was, because you thought everything was going to be peaches and cream and everything just great when you started your walk. You didn't take into account when Christ, or when the Bible says, when you come to serve the Lord, prepare your heart for temptation, right? So it says, some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth. Forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. So don't be that person, right? That is only in it. You're not in it for the right reasons, and then you don't have no solid foundation. You're not rooted in the truth. So then when any little problem happen, any little inconvenience happen, and now you cursing God and everything else, right? So don't be that guy, right? Back over here. And it says, and he that have an ear, let him hear. The Spirit said unto the churches, and the angel of the church of Philadelphia, right? These things said that is holy. He said that is true. He that had the key of David, that opened, and no man shutteth, and shutteth, and no man openeth. Right? Because Christ, got the keys to life and death. Right? He's got the final say, the final judge on these things. Right? He's the the final judge on the matter. Right? And he's the doorkeeper. Right? And it says, I know thy works, behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. And that's what it is. The open door is this truth, this wisdom, this knowledge that the Most High God gave us, right? This understanding, these commandments, the faith, the Mashiach Yahweh Shai, who the world calls Christ, right? Thou hast little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. And that's the thing. Our people, we have, and that's why we have to stay strong and keep the faith, and and don't go weak and get weak in this thing when we see, society, going awry and everything, wrap it up, whether it's your environment or, stuff that you personally experiencing. You can't get weak and and just lose sight of what's the end goal, right? The plan, right? And it says, for thou hast little strength, and that's the thing, because because of the oppression, because of the strain and stress that we face in this society, we barely holding on, right? So we trying to hang in there, right? And that's why we have to just hold on just a little longer, right? Because, like I said, it can get hard, So you see how stuff is going, right? You see, certain things are enticing, or you see, this certain, bad stuff that just kind of get discouraged, and then you like, what's the point, right? But at the same time, you have to, understand, there's a means, to this end. I mean, it's an end to this means, right? And, and you have to keep the faith, and you can't just waver because of the troubles and the heartaches and the loss and stuff that's to come, right? And it says, start back at 5. It says, "He that overcome, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name of the book of life." So again, we have to understand, right? On the flip side, yes, the ills and the temptations that we face in this life, but then also, understanding the times that we living in, and the corruption that is coming, the corruption that's here, in the further decay of this place, and the violence to come, right? And cause we got to talk about these things, cause you go to that place on Sunday, they don't talk about this stuff. They talk about stuff that make you want to shout, throw your hands up and shout, show your hands up and shout, right? That's what they make you want to do, right? But we got to understand there's prophecies in there. There's things that is happening that we can see in real time. And we got to understand these things. And oftentimes they always try to make the book of Revelation like it's some type of spooky, ooky book that no one can understand. But it's practical. Yes, written in allegory, metaphors, all that. But practical to understand. And it says, "But I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. He that have an ear, let him hear what the Spirit said unto the churches. And the angel of the church of Philadelphia write these things that is holy, that is he that is true. He that has the key of David, he that openeth, and no man shutteth, and shutteth, and no man openeth. I know thy works, and behold, I set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word." And that's what we want. Although we might be, getting beaten down in the society, going through whatever the hell you're going through in your life, and you're struggling. But you're keeping the faith. You're keeping, the commandments. You still understanding that the Mashiach Yahushua is on his way back. Everything that's happening is to lead to his return, right? That's why I tell us over here too, real quick. It says, Revelation 2:9, "I know thy works in tribulation." So he understand our works and stuff that we go through, the stuff that we did and been through, right? And our righteousness and stuff like that, and our, and even our unrighteousness. And it says, "But thou art rich." We are rich. Although we suffer the way we suffer in a society, we live as second-class citizens in a society. They just, took away the little voting right act thingy. They make laws. They took away the little civil rights monuments and stuff like that. They do things like that, right? So, but thou art rich, right? We rich because the kingdom belongs to us. Like they used to say in basketball, we got next, right? So we are rich because the promises, the glory, the covenants, the services, all that stuff belongs to the people of God, the Israelites, right? It says, "And I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan." We know what's happening, right? Back over here. And it say, "I know the works, and behold, I set before thee an open door, no man can shut. For thou hast little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name." And so again, you want to stay all the way in. Don't waver. No matter what's going on, you know, excuse me, whatever temptation, right? Let's get this really, really quick. Hold on. Yeah. So you're gonna read this. So again, because like I said, it know our works, right? He knows the stuff we've been through, and like we read in chapter 2, verse 9, it says, "I know thy works in tribulation," right? So this second Ezra, 10:21, right? It says, "For thou seest that our sanctuary is laid to waste, our altars is broke down, our temple is destroyed." And that's what happened. They destroyed our homeland, scattered the people. We scattered four corners of the earth, right? Said we have no place of worship, right? That's why we're in all these different false religions. And it says, uh, our pasalti is laid to the ground, our song is put to silence, our rejoicing is at an end, and our light of our candlestick is put out. And that's what happened as they oppressed us and subjugate us and passed laws and stuff to our people. That dimmed our light. You know what I'm saying? That, because they say, oh, you can't do that. Oh, niggas can't do that. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't go over there. So it limit, the people, right? And then it calls us to be in a docile state, a subservient state, because anytime we rise up, they got the lynch mob coming for us, right? And it says, the light of our candlestick is put out, the ark of our covenant is spoiled, our holy things are defiled, the name that is called upon us is most profane. And that's what happened. They robbed us, they stole us, they took all of our holy things, right? And and not only that, they robbed us, smacked us up, and called us a noble, right? And they call us all types of bywords and names that's not what God called us, right? They got all types of, crazy stuff to say about us, right? All different type of, wise sayings. What's the word I'm looking for? Proverbs and stuff about our people that they like to say amongst themselves, right? It says, our children is put to shame, our priests are burnt, our Levites are gone into captivity, our virgins are defiled, our wives ravished, our righteous men carried away, our little ones destroyed. And that's what happened in this land, right? When they took us off them ships, who do you think they had on them ships? They had not just, the common people. You had mighty people of the Lord on them ships too, that they took into slavery. We had kings and princes and warriors on them ships, right? And they took the dignity of those people, right? They stripped them of their, history, their knowledge of self, and gave them different names, right? Gave them a different, culture and language to speak, right? And it says, our righteous men are carried away, our little ones destroyed, our young men are brought in bondage. And that's what they did. They took the young for slaves, because it's nice and strong, they can work, they're durable, we can throw the old overboard, but we keep the young, right? And it says, and our strong men became weak, And that's what they did. They made our strong man weak. What they call it, butt breaking, right? They used to, take, one of our little big 6'4" niggers and punk them out in front of everybody, right? That's what they did, right? And Christ understand the history of that, and he's not cool with none of that, right? We can't think the God that we serve is cool with any of that, especially down to his people, right? And that's what's going on over here. So we gotta understand, right? That's why. Let's get this too. Let's get and that's why, because these things happen, we have to understand that we serve a God of justice. If you don't understand you serve a God of justice, I don't know what to tell you, right? And we don't understand what justice look like sometimes because we've been denied justice for so long, right? But the Bible got a way of telling us how justice is going to look for his people. Isaiah 49:23. And the king shall be thy nurse and fathers. It says, and thy king shall be thy, well, let me read it right. It says, and kings shall be thy nurse and fathers, and their queens shall be thy nurse and mothers. So, they're mighty people, they're upper echelons, they're elites, the rulers of this world, the dignitaries and all that. They are going to be made to be servants in that day. They're not going to have no high prestigious role and, live a life of, comfortability, right? It's not going to be like that because it says, and kings shall be thy nurse and fathers, and their queens shall be thy nurse and mothers. So this is a prophecy concerning the people of Israel and the other nations and how their mighty people, the mighty people of these other nations, they're politicians, they're nobles, they're kings, all that stuff, right? They're rich. It says, and kings shall be thy nurse and fathers, and their queens shall be thy nurse and mothers, and they shall bow down to thee. So they're gonna bow to the man of the Lord, the people of the Lord, the Israelites, right? And it says, with their face towards the earth. So they're gonna bow because they're servants. They're in that servitude position, right? And it says, they shall bow down to thee with their face towards the earth, and lick up the dust off thy feet. Meaning they're gonna be at our beck and command. Anything we tell them to do, they're gonna be like, yes, my Lord. Yes, my queen. Yes, my king. Right? Anything. Right? And that's the Most High promise to his people. It's called justice. That's how we were. Right? We used to have to lay down in the mud, on a rainy day. Right? I seen this one movie where I guess this guy had like arthritis or something in his legs or feet or something. So then he heard somewhere that if you, take a little nigger boy and lay him down on the ground and put your feet on his stomach, the little nigger child will absorb your arthritis, your rheumatism, all right? And, they did that, right? They used to, in the wintertime, this is why it's so funny to me how they, act and treat us now, because in the wintertime, they didn't have like, central air and stuff like that where the house can warm up. You got to have the fireplace and stuff, right? They didn't have like heated blankets and stuff like that. How it'd be in the wintertime. You hop in the bed be cold, right? Like, oh, the bed is cold, right? You hop in the bed. They used to use us to warm their beds, right? We used to have to lay in the bed till the sheets in the bed get warm. And when the bed get warm, then they like, all right, okay, let me get that up out you, player, right? So, that's, It's like if you old enough to remember the cartoon uh, Flintstones and how they treated the animals. I mean, that's basically, what we did. And what the Bible is telling us is, and the king shall be thy nursing fathers, and their queen shall be thy nursing mothers, and they shall bow down to thee with their face towards the earth, and lick up the dust off of thy feet. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord, for they shall not for they shall not be ashamed that wait for me. And we're not gonna be ashamed that wait on the most high God, right? Because it tells us, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels, right? And there's more. And it tells us this, 2:26. He that overcometh and keep my works unto the end, I will give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As a vessel of a potter, they shall be broken to shivers, as I receive of my Father. Right? So we're going to rule over these nations with a rod of iron, and if they get out of line, we're going to break them to shivers until they act right. Right? That's what the Bible says. So, back over there. Let's get this. Let's start at 14. Jeremiah 16 and 14. We got to understand what's coming, right? As this place is being destroyed in this coming war. And the Most High children being delivered. It says this. Therefore, behold, the day comes, said the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord that liveth brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. So if you're familiar with Moses, that story, how we came up out of the land of Egypt, the 10 plagues and stuff like that, all that, the Red Sea getting split, all that cool stuff, right? We know what's going on, right? Very famous story to the point that we got a holiday called Passover, celebrate that every year, right? So it's very renowned story, right? Because of that story, that's what prompted, archaeologists to start digging around Egypt and trying to prove certain things, right? And they would tell you that archaeology is catching up to the Bible, right? Because the Bible says things, and archaeology is every day proving what the Bible has said, right? When times before, they just thought certain things was myths or, allegory. But then they're like, oh, dang, these cities really did exist. Oh, okay, wow, that person, okay, yeah. Archaeology is finding these things, right? And let's get boom, boom, boom. So back over here it says, but the Lord, behold, therefore the day is coming, said the Lord, no more shall it be said, the Lord that liveth, that brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, right? So we're not going to be talking about that no more. It's going to be something more extravagant, something more grander, something more greater than that happened when he took us out of Egypt. That was very cool. He took us out of Egypt, brought it to the Red Sea, drowned the Egyptians, all that cool stuff. Great story. But this is going to be cooler. And it says, but the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north. And what is the land of the north? America, of course. Because that's where his people are predominantly scattered to. Although we're scattered to the four corners, but the bulk of us being over here in the Western Hemisphere. And it says, but the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all lands whither he had driven them, and I will bring them again into their land that I have gave unto their fathers. Right? And that's to come, right? But like the Bible says, he that overcome unto the end, you know, and it says, he that overcome the same shall be clothed in white raiment, right? So you have to keep your faith. You can't get weak in these things, right? So moving on. It says, because thou hast kept the word, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation. So when the whole world is going crazy, everybody breaking in everybody's house and robbing, unaliving each other, doing all types of manner of evil, the Most High God is going to protect us in that day, right? And, you know, so you got to understand it, right? Let's get this real quick. You know, 'cause the Most High God, like I said, so, hold on. It said boom, boom, boom. Hold on, let me get this one first before we go there. So right here, it's Isaiah 65 and 13. So let's read this one more time though. It says, because thou hast kept my word, my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Right? Isaiah 65 and 13. Therefore, thus said the Lord God, behold, my servants shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. So God is going to protect his people because it says, because thou hast kept my word and my patience. Therefore, thus said the Lord God, behold, my servants shall eat. Right? Meaning he's going to protect us in that day. We're going to make sure that we have what we need to have. You know, yeah, it might be a day or two you might probably go without something. But just know that the Most High God got your back. Just like how he used a raven to feed Elijah in the wilderness. You know what I'm saying? So you can't, you know, that's why you have to keep the faith. Because, again, you know, not to say you're going to be eating like it's country, but like you just got a free, you know, pass to country buffet every day, you know, but the Most High God is going to make sure his servants eat. It says, thus said the Lord, behold, my servants shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Behold, my servants shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. My servants shall rejoice, but ye shall be ashamed. Right? And because he's going to protect his people, the ones that is keeping the commandments and doing what in the faith, right? So you got to understand that. So back over here, it says, behold, I come quickly. Hold fast to which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Right? So you don't want to get, you know, how they say, tricked off the streets. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to get tricked out of your salvation, right? And start, you know, just losing faith and wavering and thinking, oh, well, you know, that day will never come, so I got time to do this and blah, 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 and such, right? You know, so you don't want to get tricked out of your salvation, right? And it says, behold, I come quickly, hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. So again, you don't want to be subjugated to, you know, just, falling out of the truth for whatever reason, right? Whether it's family, friends, stuff that's going on in your life or whatever, right? So you just don't want to be weak, right? You don't want to be a weak spiritual person, right? You want to try to grow spiritually in this thing. So, when that day comes, you can withstand the different wiles and the craziness that's going on throughout, in this world, right? So like it tells us, our wisdom and knowledge will be our stability in those times, right? Verse 12, it says, he that overcometh, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. So now again, too, getting off subject really quick, right? So this is a cut to the Trinity, because people that say the Trinity and all that stuff, right? But this is Christ, this is Revelation, right? So Revelation is a conversation between John the Revelator, John the Apostle, an angel in heaven, and Christ, right? And Christ is in heaven, right? So this is Christ with the Father in the spiritual realm, right? And what is he saying to John? Because some people will say, well, the Father and all that stuff, what people say about the Trinity. But this right here is clearly showing us it's not a Trinity. Because if Jesus is God and God is Jesus, then what is he talking about here, right? Because he says this. He says, him that overcometh, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. So Christ has a God. So God cannot have a God. Or else he's not the Most High God. That's why we say the Most High God. Because there's none higher than him. Right? So now, if Christ, who's supposed to be God also, how people say, but he just said he has a God. So, we gotta, right? Then it says, him that overcometh, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God. So again, he said it again. I will also write the name on him of my God. So he said it twice, right? That he has a God, and he's in the spirit world. He's in the heavenly realm. Right, so just to give people the understanding. So it's not Christ on earth. How people, he was on earth, so he was right? They can say that, but you can't say that because this is Revelation. This is Christ in the fourth dimension, and he's speaking with our dear brother John in his vision, right? And he says this. Him that overcometh, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of, guess what? My God. 3 times he said it. So, Christ has a God. So, we can't say the Most High God if Christ has a God, because Christ is not the Most High. Because if he has a God, then that's the Most High, who we know as the Father, who we know in the Hebrew, Yahweh, right? Which means he that exists, or the existent one, or existence, right? So, it says, in the name of the city of my God, which is in New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God. Oh, he said it 4 times. That's what they call in hockey a hat trick. He said it 4 times. Boom. Then it says, and I will write upon him my new name. Right? So, what that means is, as we keep in the faith, we stay strong, and don't waver, he's going to make us an important person in that kingdom. A pillar. Something that's a pillar, that means you can depend on it. It stands on something. Stands on it. You can lean on it, right? You know, you go to the courthouse or go to Washington D.C. They got the pillars holding up the thing. People lean on it sometime, right? And they're not thinking, oh, if I put my hand here, I'm gonna keep falling, right? Because it's a pillar, right? It's made to hold stuff up, right? So Christ is saying you're gonna be a prominent man in the kingdom. You're gonna be a prominent woman in the kingdom, right? If you do these things, right? Then it says, and he that have an ear, let him hear. The Spirit that said unto the churches, unto the angels of the church of Laodiceans, right? These things said, Amen. The faithful and true witness, the beginning of God creation. So again, he is the beginning of God's creation because God created him, right? The Most High God, should I say, created him, right? Like it tells us in Colossians 1 and 15, in other places, right? So, then it says, I know thy works, that thou art neither. I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would rather, I would thou were cold than or hot, right? So Christ was like, look, either I'd rather you be with me or against me, right? Don't be in the middle, Christ don't like people playing both sides. You know how we say, like, you over there playing both sides. He don't like all that, right? Either you on fire in this thing and you going all the way out 100%, or you can just not do it, right? Like what was it Making of the Band? What Wyclef said to Dylan, right? He was like, well, no. Matter of fact, he's like, you can either make this song or you cannot make this song, right? So it's the same thing. So Christ is telling us, be hot or cold. So you cannot be like, all right, well, I believe this about it, and I don't believe that about it, but I do like that part about it, but I ain't with all that part about it. Christ like, look, homie, get up out of here with all that. We don't need it. We don't need, because what's gonna happen when the battle happens? You indecisive, right? The Bible says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, right? You got to pick a side, right? You got to say, I'm going to believe everything that this book say, everything. I'm going to stand on what this book say, no matter whether it make me feel good or not. I'm going to stand on it. And you got to do that. Or you got to be like, yeah, I'm going to find something else to do, right? Don't be like, well, I'm going to read it sometimes, and, I like this part. I like the Proverbs, I like the Proverbs part. I like Psalms. Don't be that guy, right? Christ is telling you what to do. And it says, I know that works. He knows what's going on. He knows, who's doing what's happening. It says, I know that works. That thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou were cold or hot. So Christ is like, look, don't be in the middle, right? We ain't with this middle stuff. Ain't no middle ground, right? Either here or there, right? And you better be over here, because you don't want to be over there, right? Then it says, so then because thou art lukewarm, so you don't want to be lukewarm. You don't want to be, again, that person will, I believe a little bit, or, I'm going to sometimes do the work, I'm going to try to, be 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like, he says, so then because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out my mouth. So Christ like, look, that's like eating cold chicken, like, or this something that's this, like, nah, you gotta get up out of here, like, You're messing up the vibe, right? So you're gonna, get you up out of there, escort you that away, right? So you don't want to be that person that's lukewarm and not all the way on fire in this thing, right? Because if you're not, you might as well just not do it at all, right? Like, what? I'm laughing at myself and my little references. What was that? 5 Heartbeats. JT, Chuck. If we ain't gonna do it right, then we ain't gonna do it at all, right? So, yeah, like that, right? So, moving on. It says, because thou says I am rich and increasing goods, I need nothing. And knowest not thou wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. Because you have some people that think because some people, rely on their money, right? They take comfort in, their bank account, how much they got in their account. And to them, that means they straight. They think as long as they got some money, there's nothing that can stop them. Right? And that's the attitude, because, and then oftentimes, too, we look at people, and we think because they appear to be rich or look like they got a lot of money, and we think that they're prosperous, they're righteous, they're doing, great things and all that stuff. But sure, some of them people be scammers, what's that guy, Brother Polite? Scammer, you know what I'm saying? He used to, scam people out of his money. And now he in jail for some wild child stuff, right? It's crazy. So, it happens. So, 1 Corinthians 4:8, it says, for now ye are full, now ye are rich. You had reigned as kings without us. And I will go to God, and ye did reign, that ye also might reign with you. It says, and read again, it says, for ye are full now, for ye are full, now ye are rich, and ye have reigned as kings without us. And I would to God ye did reign, that we also might reign with you. Right? So, and that's how people are. They selfish. They to themselves. They want to try to, don't let nobody in, and don't want to, help another person, to attain, what they got, because they always like, well, I got mine, you got to get yours. We the only people that say that. I never heard nobody else say, I got mine, you got to get yours. I never heard a white person tell another white person that, or a Chinese person tell a Chinese person that, Arab person. But we say that, I got mine, you got to get yours. We say it and we believe it to a point that we made a song called I got mine. I gotta get mine. You gotta get yours. I gotta get mine. I gotta get yours. Or you gotta get. We made a song like that. That's how much we believe that, right? But nobody else talk like that. And because nobody else talk like that, that's why they can have a Chinatown in every major city. They can have a little Italy. In a lot of major cities, they can have their own little communities to themselves because they don't think like that, right? We always talk about Black Wall Street and how we need to do this and do that, but those people that build those amazing cities that our people built, like Seneca Village and Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood and all that stuff, they didn't think like, I got mine, you gotta get yours, right? They didn't have that attitude, right? So, but a lot of us do. So back over here, it says, because thou say I am rich and increase with goods and have need for nothing, and knowest not thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. Meaning they are horrible people on the inside, right? You know, people look at celebrities or look at popular people and they idolize them. You know, you hear people say all the time that, you know, it's a saying that, you know, it's a saying that it says, you know, sometimes it's not good to meet your idol, you know, because you know might be disappointed, right? But we look up to these people and not knowing that these people are probably the most self-conscious, insecure, you know, low self-esteem people around, right? That's why they patent themselves with all their material stuff, right? That we attend to like. And it says, I have counseled thee to buy me a gold tried with fire, that thou mayest be rich, and in white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear, and anoint thy eyes with eye shave, that thou mayest see. Right? Because these people are blind. They don't understand their, you know, corruptness, you know, their wickedness. You know, they got the little eye shave, you know, little cataracts in the eyes, right? They need the little laser surgery to get the stuff off. Spiritual laser surgery to get it off so they can see clearly. Because look how many people fill up these churches, those mega churches, you know, and helping pastor get a jet and houses and Bentleys and Hummers. Little daddy, we bout that. Bentleys and Hummers, little daddy, we bout that. You know, all that stuff. Helping these pastors do these things, right? And dang, I forgot the lyrics though. That's why I stopped. Bentleys and Hummers, little daddy, we bout that. And ice and rims and chain. You know the song. But that's what they doing for these pastors, right? And we think that stuff cool, so we think that something is holy about it. But that's why it says, and anoint thy eyes with eye shave, that thou mayest see. So we can see what's going on, right? And understand the wickedness and the evil and the stuff that take place. It says, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Be zealous, therefore, and repent. And that's what we got to do. We got to be zealous for the Most High God and repent and understand that, you know, what we're going through is because we don't keep the laws, statutes, and commandments that the religion institutions conveniently tell us not to keep, right? And then we wonder why collectively we go through what we go through as a people. We wonder why collectively when we look at the conditions and the mind state of our people, why we act like that. And not understanding these are spiritual punishments that are placed upon us because our lack of obedience towards the Most High God and keeping His commandments. And then our willingness to go head first into these false ideologies and religions instead of discovering our own culture, right? And it says, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Be jealous, therefore, and repent. So, again, because the conditions we go through, we know the stuff that we've been through in the last 500 years. And the Most High God said, because He loved us, He chastened, right? So some will say, well, damn, the stuff we've been through in the last 500 years, that was kind of rough. That's really messed up. Like, wow, right? Why would He do that, right? That's crazy. You know, slavery, lynchings, you know, discriminations, racism, all the stuff that we suffer to this day, right? Like, why would that happen, right? Because the Most High God told us it would happen, right? And we didn't believe it would happen, you know. As the old folks used to say, we didn't believe fat meat was greasy, right? Because He told us like this. Deuteronomy 28:1. It shall come to pass if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all His commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations on the earth. So that's what He's going to do. If we had to just kept to our end of the bargain, He's going to make us above all nations upon the earth. It's going to be the top hegemony of the world, right? Jump down to 15. But it shall come to pass, meaning in the future, whenever the Bible says it shall come to pass, meaning it's going to happen. You can, as they say, you can bet your bottom dollar, right? It's going to happen. It shall come to pass if thou wilt not hearken. Because again, if you read this book, once you get into Joshua, sure, you haven't got to get out of the first 5 books of Moses and see that we wasn't, it took us a while, right? That's why I was there for 40 years in the desert. So it says, but it shall come to pass if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, right? To observe to do all, not some, because you go to church Sunday, they probably passed that collection plate around 11 times and took their money, right? But at the same time telling you that the laws of God is done away with, no man can keep the law, but somehow people every Sunday is managed to keep the law of tithing, right? Because they go in their purse or wallet and get pastor everything they got, right? And they got that food, right? So he says, but it shall come to pass if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So God says these curses, these punishments, these whoopings, right? And then if you read after verse 15 in Deuteronomy 28, all the way down, he begins to list everything he will do to us whenever we don't keep his commandments, right? And the things he say that he's going to do to us, we can see happen throughout the last 500 years plus, going back to 70 AD, really, right? So we got to understand that, right? So back over here. So, hold on, write this because get this too. So not only did they tell us that it was going to happen, and the reason why it's happening, because we agreed, we came into contract, the covenant, we call it the covenant. The covenant is a contract, right? And the contract says this right here. It started at 6, verse 16. Deuteronomy 26 and 16. This day the Lord thy God hath commanded thee to do these statutes and judgments. Thou shalt therefore keep and do them with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, right? That's what God is charging us to do. It's giving us the terms and conditions, right? Then it says, thou hast vouched, meaning we have vouched, we have agreed, we have, signed our name on a dotted line. Thou hast vouched the Lord this day to be thy God and walk in his ways. So we said that day when we agreed to these commandments, these statutes, these laws, that he is going to be our God for our people, right? That's what we said. We said that, right? And it says, and to walk in his ways, and to keep his statutes and his commandments and his judgments, and to hearken unto his voice. Like we just read, it shall come to pass if thou shalt not hearken, right? All these curses shall come upon thee. So we said we will hearken, meaning we will listen. We will do these things that you have listed in the law for us to do, right? We said these things, right? And just so happened, it's an institution of religion that tell us, hey, don't worry about them things that you said you was going to do. What do that sound like? Come on, everybody. What does that sound like? Hey, don't worry about that. Do you really think you need to keep them laws? What does that sound like to everybody? Let's go to the first book of the Bible. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like the damn serpent talking to Eve. when he was like, did God really say not to do that, that you would die? So, you see what we're dealing with here? Don't that sound a lot like that? You know, because you have millions of people that think, oh yeah, you ain't got to keep the laws of God, right? You know, because church said, do we really got to keep them things? Do you think you can, right? You know, let me pass this collection plate around 50 more times, although that is part of the law. But do we think we can do the law, right? What we talking about here, right? Thou hast vouched the Lord this day to be thy God, and to walk in his ways, and to keep his statutes and his commandments and his judgments, to hearken unto his voice. And the Lord has vouched. So not only did we sign on the dotted line, because when you have a contract, you know, both parties have to agree to the terms and conditions, right? So, what does it say? The Lord has vouched this day to be his peculiar people, as he promised thee that thou should keep his commandments, right? So we agreed to make him our God, our power, who we're gonna worship forevermore. And he said, "Hey, and you're gonna be my people, and I'm gonna make y'all special. I'm gonna make y'all the coldest of the coldest. Y'all gonna be the greatest of the greatest, right? Ain't nobody can touch you, right? Cause I'm with you, right? And that was the plan, right? But somewhere down the line, we decided that we want to be like the rest of the nations that surrounded us instead of keeping our own culture. And we have to it was a punishment for that. And just like a good parent will discipline their child. That's why he tells us right here that, what does it say? Boom, boom, boom. It says, where that? Boom, boom, boom. It says, verse 19, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. So that's why we go through what we go through. He don't punish other nations for worshiping other gods and following, you know, they don't go, you cannot read this book where God gets angry with any other nation for not following him. You won't find that, but you will find him punishing us. Because he says, as many as I love and rebuke and chasten, the zealous therefore and repent. Be zealous therefore and repent. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and I will sup with him, and he with me, right? And because the Most High God will be with us, right? And through our trials and tribulations as we maneuver through this plane, right? And it says, to him that overcometh, I will grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I overcame and sat down with my Father in his throne. He that have an ear, let him hear. Right? So that's what's coming to the people of God, the Israelites, the Black, Hispanic, and Native American. Right? So let's go to 13 real quick. So we got to understand where we at in this thing. Right? Because you got to, you know, John written this book on the island of Patmos dealing with the Roman Empire. He was in prison, right? Riding kites, you know, to the people of Israel while you up in there writing letters, all right? So it's like this. Let's start. It says, And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. So it's talking about the Roman Empire, right? And their different provinces and their different regions and kingdoms that were, you know, all together that made up their empire, right? And it says, and the beast was I saw like unto a leopard, and his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of iron, and the dragon gave him his power. Meaning this thing is demonically influenced. These people are demonically influenced, right? they get their power from Satan himself, right? That's who they worship, right? I don't care how many churches they built, how many cathedrals they got, how many popes they put in, how many Hail Marys they say, right? The beast which I saw like unto the leopard, and feet were like a feet of a bear, and his mouth as a lion, and a dragon gave him his power. That's who empowers these people. Satan. And the seat was and the seat in great authority. Because these people control everything. They run the earth, right? Because like it tells us this over here. Job 9:24 says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Meaning, wicked people are in control of this place. Wicked people have dominion over this earth. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges. So he covered the faces of the judges. He hides the people of the Lord, right? By giving you Charleston Heston, Gerard Butler in their movies, right? Giving you Caesar Borgia as the image of Jesus, who people call white Jesus, the white Christ, right? They give you their movies and art, the imagery of themselves, right? And because it tells us, he covered the faces of the judges thereof. And because we are the judges of the world, because like it tells us in Peter, that the saints should judge the world, and we are the saints, the Israelites, and we're going to judge the world, right? Because like what it tells us in Revelation 2:26, I will give him power over the nations, right? So the earth is given to the hands of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So if these people are not the wicked, and because we know the history, we know they cover the faces because they stripped us of our identity, they hide who we are, and they changed the imagery with the iconoclasm, whitewashing, we know what they did, right? And so back over here. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. So the fall of the Roman Empire failed. So now the wound is healed. It's healed through the American Empire, this Western Empire, NATO, the EU, right? And when America did their little thing, right? We're gonna read it. I don't want to jump the gun. Hold on. And it says, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him, right? So when they formed their, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, because America like, hey, yo, y'all better get down or lay down. Y'all saw what we just did in Japan, right? So they better get with the program. So the other nations like, so we're going to get down, right? And because they saw what America did, because at that time, America was the only superpower. They still, technically, a superpower, but they're in a state of decline. That's why we see war right now. But at their peak, superpower, only nuclear country, right? So everybody well, shit, we can't mess with these people. They got the power of the sun over there. They just dropped the whole sun on Japan over there. So let's try to work together, right? So it says, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and the world wondered after the beast, because again, they saw that Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they're like, whoa, maybe these people got something. They saw the technology and the innovation of America in the 60s and the 70s. They're like, whoa, America is, just mess with them. They pumping out, a lot of product and stuff. America got rich. They got fat during them days, right? Then it says, and they worshiped the dragon and gave power unto the beast. So they continued, they went deeper into their satanic, their devilish stuff, We know they do this stuff. We know that it was the Epstein stuff. We saw the stuff they into, right? So they went, gave further, they got their little bohemian groves, their little secret societies, their little stuff that they, put together so they can do their mystery religions. Because people, we have to understand that I know us good people, we follow regular religion like regular people, whether you're a Christian or a Buddhist, Islamic, whatever, right? That's what we know, right? Although I don't recommend none of those for any Black, Hispanic, or Native Indian, but anywho, right? That's the common thing. But these people, they're into the mystery religions of Egypt and Babylon. They get into, we think these religions fade away over time and they're no longer practiced, and that was what they were doing then. Nah, you gotta understand. What did Albert Einstein say? Energy you can't destroy energy, right? It only changes state. So it's energy behind these things, right? So it never changed. They just rebranded it. That's all. Changed the name and the address. That's all.
What's that?
Hold on.
What's that?
Hold on real quick. Salakia, real quick.
Bro.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. I just want you to cut the oven down for me to 250. Okay?
Yeah, I got you.
I mean 300. I ain't gonna fuck the fire. At least 300 or 250. No, that's all 250. I thought 300. 300.
Salakia. Over here, people cooking. It's all good. We over here celebrating that Memorial Day, that black holiday, the real black holiday that they hijacked from us, right? Anyway, back to the thing. Where we at, boom? So it says, the world wonder after the beast. So, again, they became popular. They rose to prestige. Everybody want to be a part of this country, right? Come here, live here, all that stuff, right? It says, and they worship the dragon. They gave their power unto the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, "Who is like to the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" Because again, they saw what they did, to Nagasaki, Hiroshima. Then when all those nations formed together, that's a mighty military. When all those nations come together, then they have that UN charter, that a NATO agreement where, basically how we say in the hood, if one fight, we all fight, right? So they got that going on. So they, became a mighty fighting force once they formed together, right? Then it says, there was given unto him mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months. So they had a dispensation of time where they was just getting it in, and that thing is coming to an end, right? Because right here it tells us this. It's Revelation 11:11. Let's start at 10. Let's start at 8. Right? It says, and their dead bodies shall lie in the streets of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. So it's talking about the Israelites and their persecution, right, in the last days. And it says, their dead bodies shall lie in the streets of the great city. And that great city we know as to be America. It says, that great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. You know, America is spiritually known as Sodom because of the laws they passed, and Egypt because of the oppression and the slavery that it is known for. Where also our Lord was crucified, because understanding whenever you hurt the Israelites, it's like crucifying Christ all over again. Whenever you unalive one of us. How do we know that? Because when Paul was on his way coming from Damascus or to Damascus, and he ran into a vision of Christ, and and he was on his way to go kill some Israelites. And Christ said, hey, yo, why do you persecute me? Right? And when you see that, when you read that account, you get the understanding of harming us is like persecuting, re-crucifying Christ again. Right? So that's why it says that. Then it says, and they of the people and the kindreds and the tongues and the nations shall see their bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their bodies to be put in graves. So these nations watch and witness the atrocities that this place did to us, and they did nothing. They put no sanctions. They sent no warships. They put no boots on the ground. They didn't cancel any trade deals, no tariffs, no nothing on anything, you know, on this nation for what they was doing to the Lord's people, right? And it says, and they shall dwell upon the earth, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry. And the reason why they didn't do anything to help, because they got rich off the suffering of the black, Hispanic, and Native Indian here, right? These countries got rich off of that, right? And they come here and they still continue to get rich off the backs of our people, right? So it says, they make merry and shall send gifts to one another. So they get, you know, they come here, they put stores in our neighborhoods and funnel money out the community, and they send it back home, send their kids to college and all that cool stuff, right? Then call you lazy and a bunch of, you know, unnice things after they got rich off you. Watch you in the stores, tell you hurry up and buy, right? And all that stuff, right? And so these other nations have gotten rich. You know, that's just how they do it now. You know, throughout the ages, they always find ways to persecute us, right? And subjugate us. And it says, make merry and send gifts to one another, because these two prophets torment them that dwelt on the earth. Because we are the Lord's people, and those two prophets are the northern kingdom, southern kingdom, right? The tribe of Judah, the kingdom of Judah, and the kingdom of Israel, right? It's known as the two prophets. And whenever the Lord's people was on the top, you know, the other nations have to be in servitude. And so because the Lord's people is in a downtrodden state, these other nations are celebrating because they feel the freedom in the, you know, and they have the power over God's people to dominate and rule them, because it's supposed to be the other way around, and spiritually they know that. That's why they don't do anything to try to step in and try to fix things, because they all are eating off of the Lord's people. You know, some may be getting more rich than others, but they all are eating and benefit. Because it tells us, and send gifts to one another, because of these two prophets torment them that dwelt on the earth. And we torment them because, again, whenever God's people is in charge, they have to be subjugated to the Most High people. Because it told us, what's the verse we read in Deuteronomy 28? I would make the, the head and not the tail, right? We didn't read that part, but, we say we're going to be above all nations, right? But then it says, after 3 days, that's the point. It says, after 3 days, And I have the spirit of life of God enter into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. So, as we waking up and and coming back to our culture and understanding, and they're seeing it, and the fear is coming because they understand that their time is up. They know the jig is up. That we like, oh dang, these Negroes know something now. They're not just a bunch of unlearned people, right? These people, they know something, and that's the most terrifying, fearful thing to them is an educated, black person, right? Then it says, where at? Boom, boom, boom. And it says, he opened his mouth and blasphemed the name of God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. So, and that's what they did. They blasphemed the name of God by trying to, through their philosophies, their religions, and then in their doings, right? And then how they treat the Lord's people, how they subjugate us and rename us every several decades and stuff, right? Called us, went from, Negro to Negro. I said that twice. Then it says African American, Afro American. All the different names they came up, and gave us throughout time, right? And it says, right here it says, boom, boom, boom. It says, and was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And that's what happened. They made war with the saints by enslaving us when they captured us from the west coast of Africa, right? And they overcome us by subjugating us here in Americas and in other places that we're scattered to. It says, it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given to him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And that's what they do now. So after, they enslaved us, America rose up into great power, and now they have control over different nations. And if they don't get down, they send in warships over there, right? And trying to force them to do whatever they told them to do. They're kidnapping presidents. They're telling sovereign countries that, hey, we're going to make you the 51st state, right? That's what they're doing over here, right? And it says, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So all these, foolish people that you see that's, seem to be on board and thinking everything is, peaches and cream, and, we got this, they got the right plan. Just got to see it all the way out, Hold on 1 second. Fix this thing. There it is. Yeah, so, it's a boom, boom, boom. It says, boom, it says, whose names were not written in the book of life was slain from the foundation of the earth. So some of these people, like I said, some of these people is so wrapped up in the society and how this system, this beast system is ran, they don't know how to disconnect, right? They don't see the disconnect, to this thing. This is life. This is what they know, and they're comfortable with it, right? And it says, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose name that are not written in the book. So these that don't understand, materialistic, they're all about gain and wealth and me, and selfish attitudes, and, they're going to be very susceptible to this lifestyle called America, right? This this Western lifestyle, right? A lot of people, are very, subjugated to it, right? And it's because it's enticing. It's it's a Vegas lifestyle, right? Without calling it a Vegas lifestyle. And what I mean by a Vegas lifestyle is what they call Vegas Sin City, right? Whatever happens in Vegas, stay in Vegas. So that's the culture of America, right? Although they don't call it that, but that's the liberalness that they portray. And countries see it. And that's why they want to come for they can be free and be their animalistic self. That's why the Bible says that this place is a habitation for all the unclean spirits, right? Because that's what this place endorse and propagate. And it say, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given to him over all kindreds and tongues and nations that dwell on the earth, that shall worship him, whose name were not written in the book of life, in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Right? So, and we know who led us into captivity. We know who took men, children, women, old people, and put them on cargo slave ships and shipped them all around the world. Right? We know who did that, right? And it says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. We know what nation of people has the highest body count, around the world. What people whole entire existence is based off of conquering, right? It's not trade and diplomacy. It's conquering. We need to conquer people. That's their whole existence. You don't believe me? Look at history. When they crawled out of them caves, what have they done? But conquer and exploit the people that they conquer. The ones that survive. Right? That's history. That's not personal opinion. That's stuff that we all should know and have seen. Right? And they're so vicious about it. When they teach it in history class, they teach it like they were being explorers. They were just exploring the unknown world and everybody was just attacking them. And they were just defending themselves. That's how they say it, right? So, it says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Because the patience, the saints, the Lord's people is patiently waiting for this, right? For this day, that a reversal of roles come, that justice that the Bible speaks of, that we know the Most High God to be a God of justice, right? We know that. Right? was trying to find that one verse in Judith, in the book of Judith, where if just call him straight out, the God of justice. But yeah, we know he's the God of justice. But yeah, back over here. And it says, behold, another beast cometh out of the earth and had two horns like a lamb and spake like a dragon. Right, so this talking about the American empire, America. It has two horns and spake like a dragon. It has two horns because you got the House and the Senate. That's their government body, right? And the House and the Senate, they make up laws, they pass laws, but they have to agree so them laws to come into fruition, right? So those are those two horns. Then it says, I beheld another beast come out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and spake like a dragon. Because America came in innocent, like it's this beautiful country, this, give me your poor, you're weak, you're tired, you're hungry. But, but they're, but they conduct themselves like dragons, right? And it says, and he exercised the power of the first beast before him, because again, America is that revised Roman Empire. When they formed up NATO and the EU, they are the new Roman Empire, right? And then it says, he exercised the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. So it's funny too, it's a statistic that says that the Roman Empire, I forgot, hold on, let me do it right quick. Let me be factual on this. How often does the study say that people think about the Roman Empire?
According to a YouGov study tracking the viral trend, 4% of American men and 1% of American women think about the Roman Empire every day. While daily thoughts are rare, men think about it significantly more often than women. The study found that 30% of men say they never think about it, compared to 53% of women.
And so it says like 4% of people, think about the Roman Empire every day. So it's like 350 something million, right? So now, the reason why that the empire is prevalent in our minds, because it's still existing. Although we, a lot of us is under the notion that, okay, well, that was a long time ago, that's in the past, so it's not happening. But again, understanding that energy doesn't get, can't be destroyed, it only changes states. And, just a revised empire. Because we look at the White House, we see how the design of it, right? We see the court systems and how they're designed. We see how the legislation and the government is built. It's built off of how they administrated their government, right? So same thing, the Romans used the eagle as their emblem. America got the eagle as well. So hey, it's all the same, right? And it says, and he exercised the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So again, because they, the revised empire, they came back, when they formed the NATO, and it says, and deceived them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. And the sight of the beast, saying unto them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image of the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. So, because America started doing all types of amazing things throughout history, and through their commerce, their little deals, their little shrewd business deals, treaties and pacts and other things that they came up with, right? And then it says, let me read it again. It says, he do great wonders so that he make fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. So how did America make fire come down from heaven? Because when we read this, especially like coming up in these churches, we will make this like, this is like some type of spiritual antichrist guy, and he got some type of power now. No, this is what it was. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, when they dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, they called fire from heaven. Because if you understand the physics of a nuclear bomb, it's basically the power of a star packed into a nuclear, to a warhead, and you release it on a city. So we know the sun is very hot, right? Very bright, on a nice sunny day, you look up, you can barely look at the thing. That's how bright it is. Hurt your eyes. We know nothing can really get close to the sun because it will disintegrate, right? So these people took the physics of that and put it into a bomb and dropped it on the city, right? That's what they did, right? And deceived them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, they should make an image of the beast, which was wounded by the sword and did live, right? So, and that image is white supremacy, right? And that's what's propagated. That's the religion. That's the only main religion that they truly push, is their white supremacy. And white supremacy is just white survival, right? Their ability to maintain and be on this earth as long as possible and dominate the resources. Because to them, in their mind state, they're the minority, which is true. And in their mind state, because they're the minority, and everyone is different than me, and I don't look like everyone else, they all going to pick on me. So they say, well, we're going to do a preemptive strike on everybody, right? We're going to attack the whole world, and we're going to take everything. And then that way, we don't have to worry about getting X'd out, because they're going to have to come to us for everything, right? So they went around the world snatching up everybody's stuff, because in fear that nobody's going to share with them, because in their mind state, because they're so selfish and conniving and untrustworthy, they will take their dying grandmother ring off her finger. So they kind of project that on the rest of the world. So that's why they act like that, right? And then it says, and have power to do this, to do in the sight of the beast, and who can send them that dwell on earth that they should make an image to the beast which had wound by the sword and did live, and had power give unto life, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. Because again, they propagated, even in the darkest countries, they are still making sure that Mr. White Man is safe and okay, right? They are one of the safest people on the planet. They can travel anywhere and be good, right? Don't have to worry about nothing, nobody trying to harm them, right? Because they have a military that's going to come and help them, right? If somebody do try to do something. It says, and have power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast shall both speak and cause many that will not worship the image of the beast should be killed, right? So if you wasn't down with the program, they conquer you and they unalive you, they absorb you, It gets you up out of there. Like they trying to do with the Iranians over there. Like they did to the Venezuelans down there, right? Like they want to do to the Canadians up there. And like they want to get to the Greenland people over there, right? They on that. And it says, and he calls all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark on their right hand or their foreheads, right? So it's getting into currency, the buying power, right? And we got to understand this, right? And as time going by, things is coming more clear, right? Like it tells in the book of Daniel, seal up the book because it's not for your time, it's for the latter days, you know, when information should increase, right? So here's the theory. America is going through the motion when it comes to fighting Iran. You know, they do want to save their petrodollar because they are trying to, you know, save the petrodollar, but they don't really too much mind losing Iran. That's why they went to Venezuela, because Venezuela got the world's largest oil reserves. They want Canada because Canada has the world's largest natural resources, right? They're trying to get Greenland for the strategic, part of it, because close to their enemies, and they can have a little buffer zone. They want to get Cuba, because they want to build a little, international toll booth right there. So any ships come in trying to get some oil, you got to pay the fee. You got to pay America, right? The same way how Iran done turned the Strait of Hormuz into a toll booth, you got to pay like $2 million a ship, or depending on how much, that's the bare minimum, $2 million, depending on how much oil you got on board, right? So America's trying to do the same thing because they know that the countries is turning against the petrodollar, because America's money is back off the oil that's coming from over there. But it's turmoil going over there. It's unstable over there. And countries is not going to be willing to insure oil rigs and shipment containers, ships to go over there if it's war and everybody unalive and everything. So America sees that. So they're like, well, we're going to open up shop on this side. We're going to take Venezuela. Take Venezuela. Get Canada. Greenland. And get them out. Like Pokemon. Right? So, and because they want to change into an isolation type country where, and then force all the other nations, because of the turmoil that's going on in the Middle East, and not want to deal with getting shot at, and make the countries come to them and buy the oil over here. That's their plan, right? Because they're trying to save the petrodollar. Because they know that countries are turning against the dollar. So they had to start that war, right? And to try to save the American dollar. But the whole plan is, because they have something called the Great America, the Greater America. So they're trying to take the whole West, the Western Hemisphere, and lock that down. Get a small town and lock it down, right? And again, charge all the rest of the nations for oil. But, then, and leave Russia and everybody else to because Russia is not worried, because Russia is self-sustainable when it comes to oil and all that stuff. So they cool, right? So, but like I said, it's going to be crazy. And when we look at these things, right, and how the currency is changing, and they're trying to do it, they're trying to digitalize everything and stuff like that, we can see, the precursors and stuff that can lead, because they're going to crash the economy, right? We got to let the people know the economy is going to crash, because this had to happen right here. And he calls both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or their foreheads. And we know that to be the RFID chip, right? These microchips that they want to try to implant people with, right? These little different devices that they want to try to monitor everybody, and and develop some type of little point system like they got over in China and stuff like that, right? These different things that they trying to come to control the people, because you have to understand these people think they are God and they want the power of God, and in doing so by microchipping everybody, controlling people, right, and understanding what people think and feel, that gives you the power of God. Then you can better market certain things. You can kind of gear certain type of advertisements or certain things that certain things that they like, and put it in front of them. You can control them that way when you know how they think and what they feel, right? And it says, and no man might buy or sell that he might have the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Right on, right? And this is getting into the ruling class, right? These people that's implementing these ideas, these upper echelons, the elites, right? A lot of people want to make it all, esoterical, when they talk about the mark. But it says that no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is the wisdom. Let him have understanding. Count the number of the beast. Right? So should be counting the number of the beast. We know about the 13 families, right? These different bloodlines that everybody like to talk about, right? The true bloods, the blue bloods, and all that stuff, right? The rich people, the people that's up there that control stuff, right? Because you have, you got your bankers and stuff. You got the people that we know to be rich, that we see. But then you have people that controls the people that owns the gold, mines. That's the wealth, right? The people that owns the materials that make everyday stuff works. Those people, right? The goldsmiths, the things and stuff like that, right? Like I slipped that in there real quick. Those people, people that, owns the mills and different things that can, like I said, the people that, we go to the store, we buy a diamond necklace, right? And be like, okay, the person that owns that diamond store, that jewelry store, they got money. But the person that they bought it from, and that person that they bought it from, and that person that they got it from, those people, the ones that in charge of all the material things that we see, I hope that, I believe y'all understand what I'm saying, right? Because you have it's different levels. You got your bankers, then you have people that's higher than the bankers, right? And then those people, right? But it's all connected. They all together, right? All one big family. Like it tells us here. Here's the wisdom of him that have understanding. Count the number of the beast. For it's a number of a man, and his number is 600, 66. How people will say 666, right? And so, and let's just talk about the ruling class, the ruling families, right? That is the number of the men, those people, their family, their connections, all those different 13 families and all that stuff, how people say it, right? The different little fancy names that people like to throw around and say this person, that person, right? Yeah, those guys. That's in charge and controlling things. They just had one of the little economic forums several months ago, where they discussing, what they're gonna do with the whole money situation and stuff. Those people, right? So here's the wisdom. Let him that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 600, 66. So these people that's controlling these things, these are the people that's putting forth these ideas and, and propagating these things that we see today. Right? So we're going to end it right there. Hopefully that was edifying. Right? Understanding that we're dealing with this beast system. Right? And, we're coming close to it. Right? It's only it's still several prophecies left to be fulfilled and stuff like that. We still moving through the prophetic timeline, and the mark of the beast is on the docket, right? Not saying that's going to come before the civil unrest. I mean, we technically already got the civil unrest, but it's not, haven't really fully exploded, or the internment camps, but martial law, but it's definitely on the docket. It is on the to-do list, and it's coming. And we can see the precursors when we see this war and everything wrapping up, different countries dropping $1 in favor of what the BRICS got going on over there. So, and all that cool stuff. So, again, hopefully that was edifying and all that cool stuff. I am going to try to get me something to eat. So I'm going to say shalom, peace. Until next time, we out.